Hey, in this video we're going to create our block model, but before we do, let's talk about what a model actually is. When people talk about models and meshes, they use both words interchangeably. However, they really shouldn't. I'm definitely guilty of this, but it's good to know the difference between them. So, a model is basically a container for the mesh. It holds the mesh inside of it, kind of like a folder. It can also contain other things such as modifiers. A mesh, on the other hand, is the actual geometry you edit. So in this instance, we're making a 3D block, so our mesh will be a cube. Mesh consists of vertices, edges, and polygonal faces. So, as an example, here we have our cube mesh. This is a vertex. It's a single point, and when I select it, I can begin editing my mesh. This is an edge. It's a straight line segment connecting two vertices. I can also use this to edit my mesh. This is a polygonal face. It's also known as a polygon or a face in various pieces of software. This can also be used to edit your mesh. These three steps make up the fundamentals of the 3D modeling process. So now that we're done with that, let's open Blender and create our block. When you open Blender, you're met with a splash screen. Just select General to close it. At first, Blender looks really intimidating, but just follow along and you'll be fine. We'll only be using a fraction of Blender to cover this tutorial. We already have a default cube here, but we're going to delete it by selecting it with our left mouse button and hitting delete on our keyboard. So far so good. Now hold the Shift key and select A on the keyboard. It will bring up this add menu. Feel free to look around, but for now we're going to hover over Mesh and select Cube. Okay, so we've created our cube and we're off to a good start. We're not going to edit this mesh as this is all we need. However, I will show you some basic controls as well as some edit modes I previously mentioned. So to move our object, we can use a shortcut G. So this is basically a free move mode. If you hold your middle mouse button down, you can see three lines appear. They're coloured red, green and blue. If you move your mouse in the direction of any of these lines, you'll see the cube snap to it. If you release your middle mouse button, when snapped to one of these lines, it will stay snapped to that line only. If you look towards the bottom of the screen, Blender normally has a few tips on what you can do in specific modes. If you want to confirm your movement, simply left click to confirm. If not, click your right mouse button to cancel. Alternatively, you can simply use the icons on the left hand side of the screen. If you don't have this menu on screen, hit the T key to bring it up. So the cool thing about these icons is you get a nifty little gizmo with each of the transform modes. So let's take a look. This is the movement gizmo. As you can see, it's marked with an X, Y and Z coordinate. These coordinates represent where the object exists in 3D space. You can simply select any of the directions and move our cube in 3D space. It also has these little squares that allow you to move it in two directions at once. I rarely use this transform mode, but it's good to know what it does. But for now we'll stick to the arrows. This is the rotate gizmo. Again, we have solid lines just like the arrows, which you can use to rotate. We also have two other modes. First, we have the solid white line around the edge. This rotates the object based on the viewport angle, like so. Again, I never use this rotation mode, but that's what it does. We also have this other mode, which only appears if you hover over the inner circle. This is a free rotation mode, and again, I don't use it, but there it is. Finally, let's take a look at the scale gizmo. Just like the other two gizmos, this one has three lines, which you can scale your object in the direction of, so simply select it and drag it out. We also have the ability to scale in two directions at once. And we have one more scale mode, which is this outer ring. This scales the object in all three directions at once. So hopefully by now you have a good understanding of how to use the transform tools. The next part of this video is basically using the same tools just in the modeling tab. So let's move to the modeling tab. It's located at the top of the screen. Just simply select it and it will move us from the layout tab into the modeling tab. We have our basic cube here, and right away you can see these little dots on each corner. They are the vertices like previously mentioned. You can simply left click to select them, or left click and drag to select multiple vertices. Alternatively, you can hold Shift and select individual vertices using the left mouse button. Now, if you want to move the vertices, you can use the shortcuts which I previously mentioned, or you could use the menu on the left side of the screen. Again, using the icons on the left side of the screen allow you to use the gizmos to transform your object. If you're like me and prefer to use gizmos, but also enjoy the speed of shortcuts, you're in luck. You can do both. So what we're going to do is make a shortcut on these three icons. So for the first one, let's right click, go to Assign a Shortcut. Our shortcut will be G for grab. This is the default move shortcut, but we're replacing it with a version with a gizmo. Now let's move on to Rotate, go to Assign Shortcut, select the R key, and finally let's move to Scale. Right click, Assign Shortcut, and select the S key. If for some reason you no longer want your shortcuts, simply right click on the same icon and select Remove Shortcut. But I'm going to keep mine as I like having them on screen for more control. Just to show the gizmos in action as a shortcut, I'll select two vertices and hit G. As you can see, we have our gizmos now working with our shortcuts. One more thing before we move on to the next video, I'll show you how to switch between vertices, edges and faces. If you look at the top of the screen here, you can see these three little symbols. If you hover over them, it will tell you what they are: Vertex Select, Edge Select, and Face Select. So let's just try these out quickly. With the Edge mode selected, select an edge from your cube. As you can see, you can use any of the transform tools in this mode. Let's move on to the Face selection. Again, we can still use any of the transform tools in the face selection mode. So we went over a lot in this tutorial. Hopefully it wasn't too much. If you managed to get through this video, you should now have a basic understanding of what meshes are, the various ways you can edit a mesh, and beginner knowledge of Blender. Join me in the next episode where we will learn about UV mapping and unwrap our model ready for texturing.